Suzanne Charbonneau-Dent, Associate at Dillon Consulting Limited, to bring the report forward. There you are. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sorry, Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add a couple of introductory comments, and I think
Sure.
you have some as well, but I just want to thank Dillon Consulting for the report that's before council, as well as Chief Thiessen's accompanying report. Again, this is coming out of the Fire Master Plan in terms of location selection, but what we have found is, as we've started to dig a little deeper into the Fire Master Plan, we've started to take a look at what our staffing complement takes to look was scheduled to look like as part of the Fire Master Plan, and realize that we do have a concern with respect to how the future was supposed to unfold. We've had some changes and we're making some adjustments accordingly. So part of that is rebalance. I call it a rebalancing of efforts, perhaps more weighted towards full-time staff and a little less weighted towards volunteer staff than what the Fire Master Plan of 2018/19 contemplated. We are finding, again, the quality of our volunteer force is second to none. The training they go through, the dedication that they have, again, we have nothing to complain about or be concerned about in those areas. What we are finding, though, is that it is harder and harder to recruit and retain volunteer firefighters just by the very nature of the work that they do and the opportunities that are out there and the commitment that's required. So we are finding that a bit more challenging than we have in the past, and we were at the cusp of that, and we thought that we were kind of beyond that, but we are back when the Fire Master Plan was approved, and so we, as part of the analysis in terms of the station location, we started to take a look at that as well as the staffing complement, and the result of that is what you see before you is a bit of a change in direction in terms of where stations would be located. We are at this point in terms of the process asking for council to receive a few of these reports and start us down the path of some public engagement, as well as a financial plan to be conducted and undertaken. But certainly, again, I know Ms. Charbonneau is going to speak to the report in terms of station locations and some of the benefits of this change. And then I know Chief Thiessen will have some further comments as well. So again, we look forward to bringing this forward back to the public and engaging the public again with station locations. Certainly, we believe that the model that is being put forward is the best possible model that we have at this time and provides the best possible coverage in the long term. And so that's some of the things that, again, I just wanted to outline at the onset here. I'm not sure, Chief Thiessen, if you have any other comments before we turn it over to Ms. Charbonneau.
Sure, yes, thank you. Just in the way of introduction, Ms. Suzanne Charbonneau-Dent is here from Dillon Consultant. And just as a reminder, she did have the lead role in our current Fire Master Services Plan, and obviously here to present today. So Suzanne, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chief. Just get ready here with the screen, make sure everyone can see. I'll do, let's see. Does that show up properly for everyone?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Excellent. So good evening, and I am very pleased to be back with you tonight to discuss our most recent Fire and Emergency Services Planning Report for the town on the 3-station fire service model analysis. Can everyone hear me okay? The audio is okay.
Suzanne, Suzanne, sorry, your display shows the screen as well as the next slide and the comment points. I'm not sure if that's what you want to display or not, but if it is, that's great. If it's not, then you may want to make an adjustment.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see. This one should be better. That look more clean, like a full slide there?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. All right. So the objectives of the study were firstly to consider a 3-station fire service delivery model, which maintains your existing Station 1 in a present location and adds 2 new fire stations. Through the analysis, we were looking to assess the emergency response capabilities of the initial arriving apparatus from each of the proposed station locations. And really, the proposed locations were being aimed to align with the future needs of the town for the growth and development within that urban area. So a bit stronger focus on the urban area than the town as a whole. The study analyzed 3 scenarios. The first was based on town selected locations that gave us a starting point. The second scenario used a tool within our GIS-based model that assists us in locating a facility that kind of optimizes locations. And the results that provided gave us the opportunity to go back and look again for town selected locations to use as our third kind of retooled, refined scenario. As well as the modeling analysis, we also did have some consideration and comments regarding the staffing associated with the composite model under a 3-station future model. I am just noticing it looks to me as if this is not, I don't know that the slides are aligning with everything. I'm hoping, is it still the title slide for everyone?
You're still in the first slide. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm having some, I'm going to try. Does that look better? No.
Just give it a minute. Nothing yet. Okay, something's coming up. There you go.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties here.
No problem.
So to give some background on the 3-station study, we, as discussed, we completed the Fire Protection Services Master Plan, and that was adopted by Council in August of 2019. And since that time, town staff has been working to implement the recommendations, which included the proposed fire station location model. And that was a 2-station model. The first station to be constructed was located in the area of Matchett Road and Laurier Drive. And then in the future, the 2-station model would see the relocation of Fire Station 1 to Disputed Road in some of the newly proposed development areas. So the town investigated purchasing property in the area of Matchett Road and Laurier Drive to accomplish this, and met some challenges. And that brought us to the consideration of alternatives, at which kind of raised this idea of a 3-station model and investigating further some of those options. The master plan itself focused on a 10-year planning horizon, and it did include considerations up to the 20-year, but as aligned with the implementation, the 10-year was really the framework. Now, based on the most recent planning and development information, we were able to see that there is quite a bit of growth and intensification planned around that town center district, which is located in the response area of your existing Station 1. And so that's kind of raised a point that indicates there are benefits to maintaining your existing station in its current location to address some of that intensification and growth. The 3-station analysis does consider as well some of the farther term, longer term future build out of the town's urban area. And the use of this long-term target of build out better aligns with the life cycle and asset planning of fire station facilities. So the goal of a 3-station model is to get the town to the point where you have planned fire station locations that ultimately align with what your future build out growth and development picture looks like. So the study incorporated the most recently available planning information, and this included the projections that were within the 2020 development charge study. So that had a 20-year or 2039 projection of a population increase of 13,100 people. And that would equate to about 5,700 new residential units. And then the development charge forecast also included a build out, which was stated to be approximately 2040. And that would see an increase of 27,000 people, equivalent to 11,800 new residential units. And really, this residential growth is largely expected to occur either in your existing greenfield areas or as infill or intensification in your defined urban area. So what we did within this study was we used the base of planned growth and development that was collected and presented within the Fire Master Plan, and then overlaid the greenfield land parcels and considered those as potentials for future development to that build-out horizon. There's certainly a little bit of overlap in those two data sets between the kind of 10 to 20-year growth that we had captured for the master plan and then the greenfield that could potentially be beyond that. But when we combine the two, we feel that that represents the best available information for the potential that lies there for full build-out development in the long term. The three-station study analysis, as mentioned, was really considered to be an addition of station location analysis up and beyond the work completed for the Fire Protection Services Master Plan. The scope of the three-station analysis really focused on that initial arriving apparatus and didn't include some of the analysis around initial response staffing levels, depth of response, or the actual response of the volunteer firefighter within the GIS-based model. What we did do was use our previous master plan model as the base and then updated that, as we've discussed, with the growth and development, as well as known future roads. And we were able to capture some more historic call data that's occurred since the master plan date. So that was an additional data set from 2019 to October 2021. And we were able to map these extra calls, 2,527 calls in addition. So that actually brought our data set to 2014 to 2021. So a very good representation of historic calls that the fire service has been responding to. I will note that the new calls added, the majority of them do occur in the urban area. So 86% approximately of the new historic call data set falls into that urban area boundary. The study assessed station locations based on the initial response performance measure, and that's standard for looking at station locations where you have at least an element of full-time response within the province and certainly across North America. So this is based on National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA 1710, and the initial response performance measure that was identified in the Fire Protection Services Master Plan as being the best fit for the capabilities of LaSalle Fire Service as well. So just as a refresher, this benchmark targets achieving 4 firefighters arriving on scene within a 4-minute travel time to 90% of the fire suppression related incidents within the defined urban area of the town. Now, the modeling does focus on the travel time component as opposed to the staffing, but we will discuss the staffing kind of following the model discussions. For comparison purposes, the 2018 conditions from the master plan, as well as that recommended 2-station model from the master plan, provided our baseline to which we were comparing the 3-station analysis to. So just to kind of set the stage, where we were at in 2018 conditions, in an initial response, 4 minutes of travel time, we were able to cover 33% of historic calls, 28% of the area of your urban geography, and 14% of the area of the entire town. The recommended 2-station model saw a great improvement from there. So we went up to 73% of historic calls covered, 74% of the urban geography being covered. The analysis within the current study looked at 3 scenarios. I briefly introduced these, but we'll give you some few more details. Scenario 1, the 3 stations were located at the existing 1900 Normandy Street, the old arena property at 2170 Front, and the Vollmer Complex property approximately at 2121 Laurier Parkway. The second scenario was we had the fixed location of your existing station, and the GIS-based model then selected the 2 other locations to optimize coverage. And this resulted in proposed locations on Front Road near Front Row Park and at Laurier Parkway just west of Disputed Road. From that, we were able to kind of go back to the drawing board and select sites to assess for scenario 3. And this aimed to find sites that as closely aligned as possible to the scenario 2 results, but had the potential of being available. And so this resulted in, again, maintaining that existing Station 1, having the old arena property 2170 Front Road, and a proposed location just west on Disputed Road to where the scenario 2 point landed. So we'll just walk through the results, the mapped results of these 3 scenarios. So this is scenario 1. The bright green area is where we're able to reach the 4-minute travel time. So green is good in this case. You can see overlaid some of the future development and planning information, the kind of orangey yellow colors for future development that was included in the master plan, the blue lines for the greenfield properties. So the table gives us the numbers as far as the results go, and they're very good. So what we're seeing here is 84% of the historic calls within the urban area are covered, and 80% of your urban area geography is covered under that 4-minute of travel time from those 3 station locations. And as far as the overall town goes, it gets a 79% historic call coverage and 52% of the entire geography of the town covered. Scenario 2 was the optimized model, and this ended up with very, very strong results. The only thing to caution here is that these results are modeled, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that dot on the map is the place where you could construct a fire station. But the results came out to show 98% coverage of urban area calls and 91% geographical area coverage in your urban area. That is excellent. Very, very high level of coverage. You can see the only places that cause any issue are just directly around the boundaries, and that there's virtually no way to get to 100% when you're working with a model like this. And so the overall, again, very strong, 89% of your historic total calls in the entire municipality covered, and 58% of the town's total geography covered in that 4-minute timeline. Scenario 3 that added a lens of realism to that scenario 2 option, again, very, very strong results. And so in this case, we're looking at 93% of the urban area calls covered, 87% of the urban geography covered. So that means we are actually meeting that performance benchmark of 1710 that we were aiming for. So that was striving for 90% of calls covered within your urban area in 4 minutes of travel time. And in this scenario, we're actually at 93% coverage. The urban area of 87% covered means that if you were to have calls happen in those growth areas that currently today have no calls because there's nothing there, you would be expected to still be able to maintain a very strong future coverage as the development occurs. This table just provides a summary of all three scenarios compared to the baselines. So you can see that all three of the station location, the three station models improve from that existing condition, greatly improve from the existing conditions, and also show an improvement from the previous recommended two-station model. Certainly, scenario 2 has the highest numbers, but is not likely to be fully implementable as such. So that results in station 3 being the one that has very, very strong performance and also the greatest hope of being able to implement. So in addition to the station location modeling, the study did provide some comment regarding the trends and best practices in a composite fire service as they apply to these three station models. The fire master plan itself identified that LaSalle is a composite fire service as it has both full-time and paid-on-call volunteer firefighters, and that really has served the town very well to date. That was a strong, clear message in the master plan. However, the master plan also raised some of the challenges that the sustainability of using the paid-on-call volunteer firefighters to provide the primary and the initial suppression services is an increasing risk for the town, and certainly as it experiences growth. And so as a result, the master plan presented strategies that were specifically targeted at supporting the long-term sustainability of the composite department model. And really, the three-station study is still in alignment and still in support of those same strategies through implementation. There's a strong interconnection between the staffing types, so full-time or volunteer, and your initial response time. As we know, time is a critical component with respect to the growth of a fire and also to the successful intervention of the firefighters. Certainly, there are pieces that belong to the a home occupant or a homeowner, and that's related to early detection through working smoke alarms, having a home escape plan, and promptly notifying the fire department when there is an issue. Those are all important to the successful intervention. However, time is a key component. So really what we're aiming for here is having an assembly of 4 firefighters on the scene as your opportunity to safely initiate at least some level of fire suppression operations. And we consider a composite model to be optimal, where your initial response is provided by your in-station full-time resources that then would have a faster turnaround time and a faster response time. And your volunteer resources are then able to provide your depth of response. So provide the staffing on scene, to provide the total numbers necessary to meet the needs of the different types of calls, the different risks of the calls that they're responding to. In the industry, initial response is defined as the number of firefighters initially deployed to respond to an incident. So that is the first truck going there. That means that if there is a significant need or a significant event like a fire, they will call for additional resources and backup. There's also consensus across the industry that there really is a minimum number of firefighters necessary to be able to start any level of tactics like entry to a building, search and rescue, or any type of interior firefighting operations. And that number, as per the Fire Marshal's Office, guidelines from the province, National Fire Protection Agency, Ontario Health and Safety Standards, they all agree that the appropriate initial response, that first arriving on scene, should include a minimum of 4 firefighters. So that's really where the target comes from, and that's what we're striving for. Because if you don't have 4 on the scene, you have to wait until the additional firefighters arrive in order to commence those activities safely. So both two previous master plans have identified this need for future initial response provided by full-time firefighters. We've been moving towards that for some time now. And the most recent master plan identified a short-term priority to get to the point where we maintain 2 on-duty firefighters at all times at Station 1, and then transition as soon as possible to the point of having 4 firefighters on duty at all times. And this was in coordination with efforts to sustain your volunteer resources as well. So those two pieces work together. It's important to realize that it's not one or the other. We need that initial response by full-time firefighters, but we still have a very strong need for the volunteer resources to staff the additional fire suppression apparatus, so second and third responding trucks. But similar considerations of this kind of staffing model are going to be associated with the future stations as well. So future station 2 and a potential future station 3, we would look towards a similar type of model. So initially staffing with a minimum of 2 firefighters, working towards that target of 4 full-time firefighters as soon as fiscally possible in order to meet that initial response performance benchmark. Hiring of additional full-time firefighters provides a reduction in the dependency on paid on-call volunteer firefighters to be the initial response. That takes a little bit of a stress off of your volunteer model. And so it actually is one of the strategies in a growing community to support the sustainability of your volunteer firefighters. So again, these two pieces really work in unison together. As far as the paid on-call side goes, they are a key component of your fire services, if that hasn't been stressed yet. And the master plan included several recommendations on the volunteer model support. And this includes shifting away from the primary suppression being focused onto your volunteers. And you are experiencing challenges on the recruitment and retention of paid on-call volunteers. That is a common challenge across Ontario, across the industry right now. But it does seem that LaSalle has possibly a heightened challenge just based on the kind of characteristics of the community and of the people who live there, the types of work and so on. But the master plan did have a recommendation to actually increase the total complement of volunteer firefighters per station. And the idea here is having a larger pool to draw from to achieve your depth of response number. So if we're aiming for a target of 15 firefighters arriving on scene, if you're having challenges sustaining your volunteer model, we look to a bigger group. It provides less stress and pressure on each individual to make it to every call, and it makes a better numbers game as far as being able to draw the right group from the existing complement. The other thing that a larger group is important for is when we are looking at bigger events and extended emergencies, it provides a little bit more flexibility for the rotation of firefighters for rehabilitation and relief on those longer term calls. Key message here, sustaining your composite fire service model is the most cost-effective operating model for the town of LaSalle. The study had 4 main conclusions. So the first being scenario 2 provides a very high percentage of coverage of the initial arriving apparatus, both in the urban area and for the urban call coverage. However, those station locations are modeled optimized locations and may not be implementable if the property is not available at that exact location. Scenario 3 provides a high percentage of coverage with the potential to meet your benchmark of 90% of historic urban calls covered within your 4 minutes of travel time. And this is based on properties which are either owned by or anticipated to be available to the town. All 3 of the station models assessed do result in improved response coverage within that 4-minute travel time compared to the previous recommended 2-station model, and definitely from where you're at today with your existing conditions. There are, however, additional capital and operating costs associated with a 3-station model versus a 2-station, which will require further consideration. The 3-station model aligns with your long-term planning horizon that projects your full build-out of the town. So there is a level of future-proofing, if you will, of the 3-station model being that's what the town is going to need, that's what you work towards, and all the pieces have kind of been looked at from a much longer term lens. Finally, we highlighted some of the considerations for moving forward with the 3-station model implementation based on our suggestions. So the first would be to continue to annually review and update the town's community risk assessment based on the growth and development and intensification as it occurs. So there's a part of this that's a requirement based on the new risk assessment legislation put out by the province. But really the idea is that the risk assessment helps the town and the fire service be able to make appropriate decisions about delivering fire protection services to the community based on the local needs. So the risk assessment can be used as a tool to help along the way, planning when it may be necessary to move forward on the second and third station timing, things like that. Another consideration would be to conduct the cost-benefit comparative analysis of the 3-station model in comparison to the 2-station that had been considered previously. There is some further analysis regarding the staffing and how that would play out over time for the composite service that we've kind of walked through. So if we're looking at having full-time staffing in stations, what is the timing and cost associated there? And then implementing the changes to the paid on call complements. Again, what would be the timing and cost associated there? A piece of that is prioritizing and investing in those strategies to try and fully support the sustainability of the volunteer part of the composite model as well. And certainly that would require the preparation of an organization model for what that 3-station staffing would look like. There are some options there to enhance some of the roles and responsibilities of any additional staff moving forward. So some further consideration there that go beyond the scope of this study. And then the final piece is just that comprehensive paid on call recruitment and retention strategy that really is the first step in doing our best, putting our best foot forward to maintaining the volunteer complement within your composite fire department model. That brings us to the last slide.
Thank you. It was a comprehensive report. A lot of time went into that. Thank you. Before we go to council, Chief?
Yes, thanks. I know that you've received a lot of information and you have my report in front of you, so I won't go into the details of that. But I would like to make 3 comments. My first would be that both Dylan's and my report reference the challenges in maintaining our complement of volunteer firefighters. I want to be clear that I am extremely proud of our volunteer firefighters, and this challenge of retention is a challenge that is being experienced by most composite and volunteer fire services across North America. Our team is a very professional and committed team, and I'm thankful and proud of each and every one of them. Second, the reports before you describe a plan to hire more full-time firefighters. We as administration are aware of this financial impact of this. We will prepare a financial plan with this in mind, and we are not expecting to have 4 full-time firefighters at each location immediately. My last comment is that the charts within Dylan's presentation show in green the 4-minute response time from each fire station location and how it relates to the NFPA 1710 guideline. I just wanted to highlight that until the stations are built and operated with 4 full-time firefighters at each location, consistently meeting the 1710 guideline of 4 firefighters on scene in 4 minutes is not achievable. So these are my comments at this time, and am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We'll go to Mr. Carrick. Mr. Militia, any remarks before we go to council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, just there's a lot of information there, and you know, unfortunately, it just has to be that way. I wish we could succinctly put all that information into 4 slides, but it's just not possible. And because there is a lot of information, and quite frankly, it is a very sensitive and important topic that we're talking about. I will say, you know, going through this process, certainly we started down the path of locating fire station number 2. And then as we started to talk about that, certainly in discussions with the chief, we started to talk about some of our other challenges that we've had and foresee having with respect to the number of volunteer firefighters. Again, speaking and agreeing with the chief, it's not about the quality of our volunteer firefighters because they're second to none. It's more about the numbers of our and keeping our volunteer firefighters and realizing that with the demographics of our community, that's going to be a little harder as time goes on. And so we started to talk about, well, if we're moving more towards full-time fire, does that affect station location? At the same time, it seems like a bit of the perfect storm, quite frankly. At the same time, we start to talk about station location. We start to talk about, the balance between the volunteer and full-time complement. We start to take a look at some of, we're very fortunate. And if you look at our town center, we have a lot of development happening, two in particular, right? One by the town hall and one just probably a stone's throw away, where we have high density developments happening. And generally with these high density developments, we are going to need some rapid response to get to them in the event of an emergency. And so, we look at the development that's slated to happen. We look at our official plan and look at the town center, which encourages more high density development in our town center. And we start to look at a 2-station model, which actually takes away from response times. Again, not significantly, but to some degree. So we start to take a look at that, we throw that log on the fire, no pun intended, that we start to take a look at, well, if we're encouraging high density development in the town center, in the Normandy area, maybe it makes some sense for us to keep station number 1 and look at a 3-station model. We're moving more towards probably a quicker move towards full-time than we had anticipated under the 2018-2019 Fire Master Plan. And then we start to take a look at what properties do we own. We asked Dylan to come in and say, Nirvana, quite frankly, from an accountant's perspective, which somewhere deep inside there is still one, from an accountant's perspective, the easiest thing is to locate these stations on lands that we own. And so we asked Dylan to take a look at the 3 locations that we own, knowing that the Vollmer location would likely be very difficult. And it turned out that it was. Putting a station at the Vollmer would improve, but not if we're going to try to provide the best possible service, let's try and locate these stations in the best possible locations that are implementable. And so Dylan did do their kind of best case scenario, which certainly puts the stations in some locations that may not be achievable. And then they looked at kind of the best alternative to us, which is keeping station number 1 on Normandy, constructing station number 2 in the west at the Centennial Arena site, and then in the future as growth happens, looking at station number 3 in the east at somewhere in the vicinity on Laurier, between what would be the pumping station that we know that we owned out there, as well as Disputed Road, just in that general area. I would also note that when Dylan plops these little points on the map, they're within effectively about a half a kilometer, give or take. So we have some area within that. Certainly there's area within station number 3 that's undeveloped at this time that we could go aggressively and acquire some property in that area. And there are a few options available to us at this point. So, again, when you talk about locating stations, moving to a 3-station model, improving coverage and better serving, and certainly trying to address that balance or that rebalance from volunteer to full-time, still maintaining the volunteer force, obviously. That kind of leads to the recommendation that's before council in moving to that 3-station model. And obviously, this is obviously something new and required some discussion, as well as moving towards some public consultation, which we're hoping to do in February, assuming that council approves. So with that, Mr. Mayor, certainly the team's here available for any questions that council may have.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carrick, followed by Councillor Reno.
So, okay, thank you. Suzanne, Joe, and Ed, thank you for your presentations. We've all heard a lot of stuff and we've all dealt with a lot. And I'm glad that the chief and Dylan and the whole team could come together with a new plan, proposal anyways. So having said that, I don't think this is going to happen overnight. I think we all get that. So I'm not too worried about that, but I certainly support the recommendation. And I think moving forward, as we grow, it has to be this way. I don't think we can go back to any other formula or plan. So I would certainly look forward to moving this forward when the time comes. I think that as we continue to grow, and hopefully sooner than later, we can implement a lot of this stuff as we move forward so that we can get those response times down. I feel safe about that. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of part-time and coverage and all that stuff, because the report, like I said, speaks for itself. But having said that, I certainly look forward to it. I just have one question for Joe, our CAO. So on summary of reports to council, would it be premature to say that we could remove item number 2? Thank you.
Again, assuming that this council approves, we will address that. We will be addressing item number 2 on the council reports. And for those that are unaware, item number 2 is dealing with the Centennial Arena site.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Renaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Councillor Carrick said, I'd like to thank the team for looking at this again. As we all know, there's been a lot of passion about the results of the last master plan. And you know what? We would have done what was best for the community, but knowing that things changed, even since that report, things have changed. Our official plan has changed. Our comprehensive bylaw, zoning bylaws changed. These things move the goalposts, and that two-station model might look good for today, but it won't look good down 15, 20 years down the road. I think your new data and your new set of eyes has really come up with the best scenario. And, anyone who's following this will understand it's going to cost more money. We know that, and I have full trust in our financial team that they'll be able to turn around and come up with a sustainable plan to make this happen. For example, the last 3 years, we've been building up our full-time complement slowly. And, hopefully by the time we get that next station open, we'll be ready for it. And I do trust that our financial people will help put together a plan that will make this work at the smallest inconvenience to the taxpayers. So thank you very much, and a great report. And I will obviously support scenario 3. Scenario 2, although it is slightly statistically better, it puts one of those stations at an inconvenient spot right in the middle of our riverfront property development, which a lot of people are also very passionate about. So thank you again, and I will support.
Thank you, Councillor Renaud. I have Councillor Akpada, then Councillor Edicio Spagnolo, and then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. Received a number of phone calls, like I'm sure my colleagues have, and I'm just looking for a point of clarification on scenario 1. I just want to make sure that I understand what scenario 1 would do, because a number of members of the public have reached out to me to say, if you own it, why not put it there? And if you can you explain to us what the differentiation would be in the other scenarios? And I realize you've done it, but I'm looking for a succinct collapse of where the other stations may go under the other scenario. And I realize from the presentation that the teams did that we're not dropping, and if I quote, and keep me honest here, we're not placing the pins now, we're talking about the general area. So once again, Your Worship, it is folks who simply asked, if you own it, why not build it where you own it? And that's what the vast majority of the members of the public have reached out to me and asked me to get some points of clarification on this, sir.
Who wants to take that one? Ed, then Joe, or you guys battle? Who wants to answer?
I can start, Mr. Mayor, if that's easy.
Okay, go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, so just to clarify, the only site that's different really between scenario 1 and scenario 3 is the Vollmer complex location. And so with that, we're just shifting to further down Laurier Parkway. And so there certainly are benefits. And when you kind of hold the two maps side by side, you're able to see the differences in the coverage of area. And it really shows that some of the new developments, certainly in the east side of the town, are left uncovered under the scenario 1. And scenario 3 really is able to reach much more of that planned future growth and development. So that's what our best assessment is at this point in time. It provides better geographical coverage and better coverage of where we know there will be future residential areas, future needs. The fact that it covers your existing call numbers at a higher degree shows that you're also going to continue to serve your existing residents better under that model. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I do think there is an opportunity, as the moving part there is the third station. That gives us some time and maybe a little bit of time for clarification. So it's possible that that's something that we can see how the growth and development plans come through, and that would then be the determining fact in where that best Station 3 location goes. And that aligns with that idea of continuing to update the fire risk assessment in coordination with the growth and development planning.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Akpata?
Yes, sir, it does. Can I ask a supplemental?
Yes.
So again, I understand what you've explained, and I get it. One of the other questions that's been brought to me is, for future planning, what is the obligation of the municipality to let future builders, not developers, but home buyers know that there may be a fire station in their area? And would that be something that we would do? Because again, if we're talking about potential growth areas, one resident said, I'd love to build a bigger house. I just want to understand how I may or would be notified that this may be something coming down the road.
Looks like Mr. Mara popped up. You want to take this one, Peter?
I can attempt to. I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of fill in a little bit for that question. But certainly, the area that Station 3 is identified is in the Howard Bouffard area. If council recalls, that area is zoned as deferred urban within the new zoning bylaw. As part of that reason for the deferred urban was so that the town can work on a secondary plan in that area. As part of that secondary planning process, there will be identification of municipal needs within that entire planning area, from parks to roadways to school sites to fire stations. So it's going to be a public process, a public document. And once that secondary plan is in place, certainly as we progress through some of that stuff, all future notices, and certainly should council wish, we could erect a large sign up on that property once we secure the piece of property and things of that nature. But that is kind of the premise of when we start to move forward on Laurier Parkway within that particular Station 3 location. As council is aware, Laurier Parkway, all the frontage on Laurier Parkway is currently, as part of the new official plan, is currently zoned as mixed use. So anything that's being built along Laurier Parkway will have to meet that mixed use. Form. So those will be low-rise apartments, 3-4-story apartments, multi-residential businesses, and things of that nature. So the idea of locating this on Laurier along that mixed-use corridor is putting it in essence a more of a commercial setting as opposed to a low density residential. Now there is existing low density residential out there, but certainly when we work through that process, how that gets buffered and how close does the new station get to some of the existing residential properties, those will be things that we have to work out and deal with in the future as we get into some of those secondary plans and things of that nature.
Joe, Ed, anything to add? Sounds good. Okay, Councillor Akpata, you satisfied, or another question?
Nope, Your Worship, those are the questions that have been given to me by the public, and I hope that they've been answered correctly. I understand the information that's been given, and I appreciate the answers.
Thank you. We have Councillor Idicio Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you. First, Councillor Akpata just asked one of my questions regarding the potential home builders, if they were going to be notified, if there were going to be a fire hall in that area. So thank you for answering that question, Mr. Morrow. The second is I just wanted to thank Suzanne and Chief Thiessen and administration for exploring new options. I'm satisfied with some of these options, and I think I would be happy to support scenario 3, but I am looking forward to getting some community consultation. Hopefully we can have that in the near future to discuss this and to get feedback from our residents. So thank you for your presentation.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I think everyone feels the same way. It was important for us to revisit where we were sitting with our master plan to see if any major changes had taken place. And obviously by the results presented to us tonight, a lot of changes have come our way. I have some concerns. I know we're looking to try to support this evening, the concept of it, but it's very difficult to move from a 2-station to a 3-station model and kind of throw all the support behind it without really knowing financially where this puts us, what time frame we're looking at, like what is the plan for the 2nd station? How long are we looking for that 3rd? I know this is a 20-year plan. And my other concern was our main station. We weren't looking at keeping that as our main station. So with that being said, what changes are we going to have to see at that location to be able to continue to use that as our main place? Is it sufficient? Are there updates that are going to be required for us to keep that? My other question was with our 2nd station plan before, we had looked at that possibly being a 2nd or maybe main EOC for the town of LaSalle. What would the plan be for that now? Where would that move to? I'll start there because I have a few more.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, what is before council is to receive these reports and authorize the preparation of the financial plan. So some of those questions that you're asking about, what does the financial plan look like? How are we going to phase this in? Certainly, as Chief Thiessen has indicated, this is going to take some time. I mean, the idea of we're, quite frankly, we're not going to be in a position to build 2 additional stations and staff them to the extent that we want to in the short term. This is going to be a longer term plan that we're doing, albeit it'll be a bit of slow and steady, if I can describe it that way. So the whole idea is, again, from a public consultation, and I think Councillor Richo Spagnolo spoke to that as well, is that our plan was that subject to council's approval tonight, we would begin the consultation process or the public engagement process in February. We would probably have that open for about a month, for the month of February, and then close that off and bring those comments and information back to council probably late in March with a financial plan for the eventual approval. That's our kind of game plan in terms of from a timeline perspective. So again, at that point, council will have the ultimate decision at that point to go forward based on what we hear from the public consultation, as well as the financial plan. At that, again, flowing through that timeline as we suggested. So that's basically the plan. In terms of your comments with respect to what would happen to the main station on Normandy, as well as the potential for an EOC, those items are still on the table. Again, we would co-locate an EOC, whether it be at station number 2 or station number 3. I would also suggest even that station number 3 may be the main station, and headquarters, what we know as the headquarters today, may be more of a substation as opposed to the headquarters station. So all those gyrations of what goes where and what we have to do will certainly are all on the table at this point in time. And certainly, again, from a headquarters perspective, the space is the requirement and where we locate people. But certainly, we view each of the 3 stations interchangeably at this point, and looking at where is the best possible location to co-locate some of these infrastructure, some of the infrastructure that we need. So those are all on the table. It's just a matter of how fast we can get to them, and certainly through the implementation plan. So I don't know. Let me know if I've missed a question. Please let me know, and we'll try to answer those. I'll try to answer them.
Joe, I just wondered if you could give the viewing audience and council, when you say timeline, it'll be slow and steady, but if everything went perfect, it was approved, public consultation went great, and we go to station number 2, we're not doing anything before, what, 3 years possibly?
Well, I mean, ultimately, if we're moving in that direction, and again, I don't want to predispose council to any timeline, but we would likely start down a couple of processes after council approval. We would start to look at design work for the new substation, wherever it might be located, but we would look at design work for the new substation. We would look at enhancing our full-time complement so that once that substation is eventually completed and up and running, we'd have the staff to go into it. We would also look at, certainly Mr. Mara spoke about the secondary plan in the Howard Bouffard area, and looking at where does that station number 3 look to be located, and look at how we go about acquiring property and quite frankly erecting a sign that indicates a station coming soon. So that is where we're working on. We don't suspect that substantially for 2022, which would be this fiscal year. Again, assuming that council, we go through this approval process, we would probably undertake the design process and then start the implementation of the financial plan, beginning with the 2023 budget and moving forward with that. So I would suspect that probably in the next 30 months, 24 to 30 months, we would see assuming that council agrees and we go through that, we would start to see a station number 2, wherever that might be located, operational and staffed. Now, I will say though, again, moving to a full staffing model will take some time. So we might work through that. And I have to say, compliments to our fire association. They are aware of the planning process that we're going through and have been very cooperative and collaborative with us in terms of moving forward and working with us in terms of staffing and through that process. So, again, that would be more or less the timeline that we'd be thinking.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Okay, so some of these questions I'll save, I guess, for when we get to the next phase, because I think they're more detailed questions that we need answering more about the complement of volunteers and full-time. So I'll leave those. I do obviously love the idea of using town-owned land to build these stations. And we've spoke about the arena property for as long as I can remember on council, suggesting that that was a great location. So I am happy to see that that is being considered now. I know at the time we couldn't even consider it because half of the coverage was in the river, but with a third station that makes up for that loss. So it is exciting to see us be able to use a property we own. And that brings me to exactly what my other members of council have mentioned as well, which is wherever that location ends up being undisputed or Laurier or in that vicinity, I would really, really like to see us put up that sign sooner than later. I don't want us to run into the situation we've run into for the past 6 or 7 years, which is every time we go to propose a new location, we get members of the community saying, I had no idea this was going here. I built my dream home here. We don't want to run into that again. We want to make sure that the public is well aware of what's going on and what our plans are for the future. So I think that's a really big part of this next phase, is to be sure that once that location is selected, that the public's well aware, and that sign, I don't care if it's another 20 years before anything goes there, but people are well aware of what is going to be built there. And that brings me to my last thing, which is I realize this is supposed to come back, I believe March 22nd. I think I may have wrote it down incorrectly. Is that enough time to get a complete financial and make sure that the residents have their say. I know it's hard with some people with Zoom being able to offer these type of open house, I guess you would say, over Zoom. And I don't want anyone from the public to feel that they didn't get their opportunity to come and speak on it, because that's, again, the last thing we want is people to feel like we didn't involve them in such an important decision for the future of our town.
Joe?
Yeah, so we certainly will have, again, the COVID environment has made us really good at dealing with virtual meetings. Again, we recognize that sometimes is difficult for some residents, but again, part of it, working in this environment is we're learning to deal with it. I will say that we have had the opportunity, and I think this issue in particular has brought forth a lot of multiple channels that folks are voicing their opinions and getting that information to the town. So I think that is possible, and it is certainly those avenues are flowing much freer than they have in the past. I will say we do employ these play speak model, which has had great success with respect to outreach, with respect to the Petite Côte project on the waterfront project. So we will be using that as well in terms of getting that messaging out and soliciting that input. With respect to the financial plan development, I mean, we had a basis of a financial plan based on the 2018 master plan. So we are now going through that process of refining that plan based on this change of direction. It gives us effectively 2 months from now to get that up and running and in front of council. From the financial plan perspective, I believe that's possible. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that we're going to know all the ins and outs of how many volunteer captains are we going to have, how many volunteer firefighters, when are those recruiting going to happen, what is going to be the process. Like, some of those particulars, operational details, won't be known until we start to implement that down the road 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So if the expectation is that we're going to have this all-encompassing plan available on March 22nd, I could give you December 22nd, and we probably still wouldn't have the plan available on at that point. We will have some broad-based assumptions in terms of what our hiring patterns will be, how our recruitment patterns will be, how volunteers and the full-time force, the rebalancing, as I spoke of, how that's going to occur, what the timeline would be for construction, design, and so forth. Those are some of the things that we'll cover off on the March 22nd report, assuming council approves. And so I believe that we will have enough time. Should we not, we will then go back to council and ask for a deferral. But we believe that we should have enough time. Internally we've discussed that, and we believe that that gives us ample time to get that report in front of council.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I saw Mr. Langlois pop in. Did he want to add something?
Sorry, I was just going to state that we've had some preliminary meetings, myself and the chief and the deputy chief, some good discussions. Actually, many of the questions that have been asked this evening by council, we're looking at addressing. A good example is, with the current headquarters, if there is eventually 4 full-time firefighters at that location, will there be some renovations required and whatnot? So we're starting to think and make sure that it's an all-encompassing plan, and we're not going to leave anything out. Another example is there additional equipment required, additional fire trucks required? So at a very high level, we're trying to think. It might not be the exact year that we purchase it, but it's going to give us a good idea and a good plan to work towards. And as Mr. Malicious stated, 5 years out may need a little bit of tweaking once we start rolling some of these initiatives out, but we're going to make sure that we do have a nice, responsible plan to move forward with, and it shouldn't be a problem having it ready for the second council meeting in March.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Langlois. Councillor Desjardins. Sue, you're still muted.
Sorry, I don't have a lot of voice tonight, so I'm keeping my mouth shut. But my colleagues have asked the questions that I wanted to bring forward. But I want to say that this is a typical LaSalle thing where we're looking at it today, 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years down the road, so that we're not leaving our residents in any difficulty with fire, with safety. We're planning, we're looking at the whole package. We're looking at different options that we have. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Some of us have thought the fire hall should go on Front Road for a while. So I'm glad to see that that's kind of back on the plate. Changing out Normandy possibly to a secondary station and making the new third station, the main station. I think that is a good plan, and we need to look at doing that. So I think going forward, we're going to be in good shape, and we're taking care of the residents, and that's our mandate, is to take care of the residents, provide them safe facilities, offer them good fire services, offer them just good services, and I think that's where we're at with this tonight. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. I just want to make sure, I believe we have Mr. Carrick putting forward the motion and Councillor Reno supporting the motion. I just want to make sure, the recommendation, I just want to make sure there's 4 of them. So the first one is that the report of the Director of Fire Service Chief dated January 11th regarding Fire Master Plan and implementation, fire station location strategy be received. Then we have the presentation by Dillon Consulting regarding the 3-station fire service model analysis be received. And further, that council authorize administration to append the 3-station fire service model analysis report from Dillon to the Fire Protection Service Master Plan 2019. It's 2. That the strategy of scenario 3 as presented in the 3-station fire service model analysis report from Dillon Consulting be approved. And that council authorize to administration to prepare a financial plan for scenario number 3. So I just want to stop there for a moment, because if this comes back at $60 million, council won't approve it, hypothetically. So there's still an out, but we have to move forward before we get the financial plan. And further, that council authorize administration to plan and prepare a virtual public information platform to present the 3-station analysis to the community. But before we vote, it's been discussed, it doesn't matter where we put it. Centennial Arena, all the people who didn't want it at the other location we were looking at said the old arena site. None of the neighbors that live there said that. So you know you're going to get backlash wherever we go. But if this is the final report, and it seems like it is, there's a lot of study, background. Suzanne did a great report, all the scenarios, the potential, where we're going, and number of calls, the lack of retention and recruiting new paid on call. We need more full-time. It's all culminating into something we have to do. Councillor Desjardins, you said it's for the safety of the residents. That's our number 1 mandate. Whether it's fire, police, we're third safest community in Canada. Well, we want to be the safest for fire and police, not just police. So with that, Mr. Carrick, you are making the motion for the recommendation to receive all 4, and Councillor Reno, you're supporting?
Yes, I am.
Okay, on the motion, discussion. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Just on the last point of what we're moving today, is there a way we can do something that is not virtual, set up in the town hall for maybe the handful of residents who can't sign online? I know we are not encouraging people. Maybe they could make an appointment to see like storyboards or something. I know I've heard from residents who feel that, everything's virtual and some of them don't have the capabilities of going online and doing that. Is there something that we can offer those residents?
I'm trying to think of the restrictions under COVID as they sit right now. We may be able to, again, we can look at that and try to provide a by appointment situation where folks can come in. and look at the information. We can make this report available, for example, to the ratepayers should they not be able to get a printed copy elsewhere. I would also say that it doesn't preclude residents from calling us and trying to get information as well. In terms of coming in, we can make these reports available to residents. We can have, again, if they're looking for specific information, certainly they're more than welcome to call into the chief or myself, and we can make an appointment to really discuss that their particular issues and put that as part of the public record if need be. Certainly, we would encourage those kind of things. If you're looking for, what we would term as our traditional public information sessions that we have, those are probably not possible under COVID at this time. Perhaps in 6 months or whenever, if someone's got a COVID crystal ball, I think I threw mine out, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But what feels like 3, 4, 5 years ago. But certainly we can, we're available by appointment. Certainly it's always the case. We would encourage it if you're getting calls. We would encourage those individuals, give them our numbers, give them their names, or give us their names, and we'll certainly return their calls. We will try to make like an appointment schedule, so to speak, where folks will be able to come in under an appointment basis. Part of it is we have an operation run. Believe it or not, there are other things we do than try to site fire stations, and so although sometimes it feels like that's all we do. That's just a little joke there. I can still be funny at this hour. But certainly, again, from that perspective, we can try to isolate a day or two where we have, a couple of hours where folks can come in and make an appointment. We typically, in situations like that, most times they just want to talk to us, so we can either do that through appointment or by the telephone. People aren't looking to make an appointment to come in. Unless it's in a group type setting, which unfortunately we can't do under the current pandemic conditions. So we will try, but again, what a typical public information session would be like, that we will not be able to do.
Okay, so as the mover, I'm okay with what Joe's added, if that's okay with the majority.
Jeff, you okay? He's thumbs up. Okay. On the motion, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Great presentation. Appreciate it. A lot of information, but you made it easy to digest. Thanks.